Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's Daniel Umstead, host of the RNG radio show. Got another king on the podcast, but you know my routine. I got to run through the bio first. So Daniel Harvey, known as Dan the Real Estate Man, is a seasoned real estate investor with an extensive portfolio of multi-million-dollar residential and commercial properties. His personal blue-collar to millionaire story has inspired many to take control of their financial future. His proven investment strategies have yielded impressive returns through multiple market cycles and allowed him to retire at the age of 34. As a dedicated mentor, he has been educating and sharing his unique strategies and investment perspectives to the next generation of real estate investors. He is also the owner of an exceptional $8-figure development company, DMH Investments LLC, and founder of BRAC, which stands for Black Real Estate Alliance Group, which in essence is Real Estate Investor Alliance Group. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have Dan the Real Estate Man on the podcast today. Brother, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Daniel. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. Share my story.
Absolutely. So we're gonna start with the basics. So what got you started into real estate? Something that you saw on TV, heard through a friend. What really got your passion into it?
Yeah, so my path was very unconditional. It wasn't your normal path. So I used to work for SEPTA. I was there for 18 years. And outside of that, I was a promoter. So started off doing small parties, built it up to doing events at like 10,000 seater stadiums. And so that's how I actually thought that I would become wealthy. I thought it would be through that business. And I was young. I was probably 20, 21. And so my mom is a realtor, and she saw that I was a young guy. I was making money, and she said, "Why don't you invest in real estate?" And I had no interest. I really had no clue about real estate, but it's my mom. So I would make mom feel good, and I would go out, look at some stuff, and I would just let her down later on, like lightly. And during that process of kind of looking at properties to make mom happy, just this idea popped in my head, like, okay, right, I have my full-time job. I have this business. It wouldn't be bad to have this third income stream owning real estate. So I ended up, my first real estate deal that came through that whole process was a bank-owned property, a bank-owned duplex. And my strategy at the time was super, super simple. The property cost like $20,000 and I had like 25 grand saved up. So I was like, well, that works. And so that was my first introduction into buying real estate.
Okay. Dang, awesome, man. And then during your bio, we talked about BRAG, the Black Real Estate Alliance Group. Can you talk about that as well?
Sure. So again, I mean, I started investing 2001, 2002.
Okay.
And my personality is I go out, I seek the information no matter where it is, right? I think that's actually been one of the reasons why I've been able to do well, is I don't mind being uncomfortable. What I found early on, things have changed a bit now, is I would go to these events and quite frankly, I would be like the only Black dude there, right? It would be me. Or the other thing that I saw is I would go to events and you would see groups of people that had their own foundation, whether they were whites or whether they were Spanish. You would just see a community amongst other groups. And that's not something that I saw with like Black investors. And my mindset is like, I'm not a complainer. If I don't see it and I feel like it needs to happen, I'm going to create it or find some way to try to make it happen. And so that's where the idea of BRAG came from. So I called some folks up 5-6 years ago, asked them all come out to this happy hour, and I shared my vision. And it's just grown from there, from seven, it might have been like 10 people there at that first meeting. Now we have thousands of folks that are on the online Facebook group. We have hundreds of people that kind of meet. So it's really grown into a robust group of not only investors, but of real estate agents, of insurance agents, contractors, appraisers. So basically, the whole real estate ecosystem is inside of the Bragg group. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I wanna because the podcast in itself, RNG Radio Show, talk to a lot of the business owners, and what I'm seeing to be the common thread is that vision. And I want to tap back a little bit to that. How long for the vision? Because you're seeing it to fruition now, starting off with the 10 people, but prior to even that, how long did it take, for your vision to come together? You mentioned, going out to different meetings, being the only Black person there, or even seeing those communities, groups within groups, no matter their background. So how long for the vision before you said, you know what, let's do happy hour and make something of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I think we all have a vision almost right away. It's just most of us for so long have pushed them down, right? We don't allow for them to flourish. So it would be hard to pinpoint exactly when. I will say there was a particular rooftop event so long ago. I don't even know whose event it was, but it was one of those moments where you can see it in real time, right? These groups of individuals where you had sort of older investors there kind of leading the way and mentoring their own folks, which I have no problem with personally.
Absolutely.
I said, you know what? I need to go ahead and actually make this thing happen, because it had, you always kind of get that little thought and it grows and grows. And I think the difference is people are generally just afraid to take action. So I said, I need to put it out there, right? First thing, sometimes you just got to get it out of your head, right? Because a lot of times it just stays here, and it never comes out. So I said, well, let me get some folks out. Let me just put it out there. So, it probably wasn't very, very long that the idea or the vision took hold, right? Because I've been doing it for a while, and I've been traveling around to different conferences, and that was just what you would see. And so it was just, I think at that rooftop event, it was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to call these folks up, and I'm going to just put it out there. And the folks that's with it, great. And the folks that are not, fine. But most people just never get to that step where they actually listen to the vision and take action. So I think that's a big part of it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. No, I really appreciate that breakdown. As continuing back, I hope y'all was listening. That definitely was a jam for y'all. For those that because I know you do multifamily conversions as well. I definitely know the simplicity of it. You see an office building, you want to turn it to an apartment building. With your background and expertise, can you give some further insight into actually what it is?
Sure. But first, I want to let people know how I even stumbled into the strategy. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'd say prior to, all real estate has market cycles, which most of you know, right? And so I started investing heavily, I'd say 2010, which was after the recession in 2008, when real estate prices were really, really depressed. There were a lot of foreclosures. So it was a lot easier to find deals. And so how I used to find deals, even multifamily deals, were basically all bank-owned properties, right? So banks were just trying to get these properties off their books. So they would sell them for like pennies on the dollar, and you were able to pick them up, fix them up, and then rent them out. But around 2005, around 2015, rather, 16, I noticed that, number one, the number of bank-owned properties started to drop. And then banks started to sell those properties at more of a retail number because more investors started coming back into the market. And so the numbers kind of stopped making as much sense. And so but I wanted to continue the process of buying multifamily properties, and especially commercial multifamily properties. So 5+ units. Excuse me. So I looked, and I would look at properties that were already existing multifamily, and I say, well, how did this become a multifamily property, right? What was that process? How did they, and I'm not talking about properties that are like purpose built, like somebody converted this property into a multifamily property at some point. And then that's when I started to understand the power of zoning, and that it was the zoning that allowed for properties to be converted into multifamily buildings. And so I went down that rabbit hole of understanding that process. And so then I started to execute on it, say around 2017 or 18. And for real estate investors, generally your highest return is going to be taking a property to its highest and best use, which is what zoning allows, right? So, and one of the, for all the issues that Philly has, one of the great things about Philly is they have a very clear zoning process, right? So once you understand what you can do, it gives you a leg up. So what that might look like is if you and I are looking at a building, and this happens often, you might look at the building and all you can see is a single family property. Okay, it's currently a single family property. I could flip the property, or I could possibly rent the property out. Obviously, your numbers have to be at a certain point to make that make sense. There's only so much rent you're going to get for it as a single family. There's only so much money you're going to sell it for as a single family. But if I'm looking at the same property, I'm like, well, I can turn this into a duplex. I can turn this into a triplex. I can turn this into a quadplex. I can turn it into a commercial building. Now, my numbers are totally different. It opens up the opportunity, right? So it's that leg up that investors have once they understand zoning.
Wow. Oh, awesome. Listen, man, I got notes down here out the wazoo, just on my end. You talked about zoning. What is typically that process like, as you mentioned, as far as the length of it, and what factors, come into place with that? And I'm being selfish here because part of these questions are coming from me. So like if somebody is converting, that single family home into maybe a duplex or maybe even a multi-unit, adding on to it, typically what is that process like, and what goes into that?
Okay, so there's two ways of turning a property into something other than what it currently is, right? So, but in this case, we're going to talk about going from single family into multifamily, just to keep it simple. You can, one, get what's called a variance, which means that your zoning, the zoning of the building does not allow for a multifamily property, right? In which case, then you have to talk to the neighbors, you have to go in front of a neighborhood community organization, kind of let them know what your plans are for the building. They can either agree with your plans, they could not agree with your plans, or you could compromise on, say, what you want to do. Like, say, hey, I want to do 4 units, and they say, no, we think that's too much. We think you should do a 2-unit building, right? And the last step of that was after you meet with them, then you go in front of the ZBA, which is the zoning board. And ultimately, the zoning board is who would either approve or they would disapprove of your project. So that's one way. The other way is the way that I do things, which is called by right, which means that what I'm doing, I'm able to do by right, which means what? Which means I skip all those other steps. So I don't have to ask the neighbors. I don't have to go in front of any NCOs, right? Or, any neighborhood groups and ask them about how they feel about it. I don't have to go in front of the zoning board. It's what is allowed according to the zoning classification of the property that you are buying.
Okay. Okay. And I mean, typically with that, through your process, how long does that take?
How long does which part of it take?
As far as, going through the second process of through the buy right process, typically how long does that process take?
So if you're asking, so there's a couple of steps.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the paperwork steps. There is identifying to the city that I am converting this property from, let's make it simple, 1 unit to 2 units.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to my previous example, it was a variance that could take, I don't know, 4 to 6 months because you have to go through all those steps.
Right. Okay.
If it's by right, it takes 1 day, right? It takes 1 day. It's a totally different animal, right? And excuse me, I got a little
Oh, good, man.
the
Okay.
allergy thing going on. Yeah. Um, so it's a big difference in time. It's a big difference as far as time frame. Now, the actual development part of it, like the physical work, that's going to vary all depending on how much work you're doing on the property and the overall scope of the project, right?
Okay.
That's going to depend, right? But the actual paperwork piece of it, of like, hey, I need the city to acknowledge that this is no longer a single family, it is a duplex. Variance 4 to 6 months, few $1,000s. If it's by right, 1 day, it's like $150.
Wow.
Super simple, which is why understanding zoning, this is not just in Philadelphia, right? This is across the country. You need to understand
Okay.
zoning and the impact of zoning, right? Zoning to me is like that next level of investing. Because once you can tap into zoning, you can make so much more money. I mean, we can go over a couple of different projects that I've done, even projects where you don't even have to build it. You can just find the right property or the right land that has the right zoning, and then get it entitled for so many units and then sell that off. So
Okay.
yeah, so there's a lot of there is a lot of profit in understanding zoning and what I call when in highest and best use.
I love that. I love that. And because it just sounds, of course, too good to be true. I one question that was kind of as far as, what was it? It was at the tip of my tongue. Challenges. So, what are like some of maybe the zoning challenges that you may have run into, have heard people run into when they are trying to do this process, even through the buy right, which, as you mentioned, takes a day.
Yeah, I mean, challenges, if it's by right, there's not many challenges at all, right? If
Okay.
you understand the process, if you know what the city's looking for, it's cut and dry,
Okay.
right? Now, once you get over a certain size of a project, so the largest by right project I've done is 44 units. And so there are levels. So once you're building, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's about once your building size is over 50,000 square feet, then that opens you up to a different review,
Okay.
right? Most of probably the people watching this podcast are not going to do that. But keep in mind, it's just understanding the process. Anything underneath that, then you're fine. It doesn't matter. That 44 units still took a day and it was $150. or something. Yeah, it was like $150, because it's by right. But it's just understanding that process, understanding what the rules are based on the different classifications that that you're working with, right? It's like when I found this out, I was like, whoa, this is wild. Like it was so exciting to just like understand this, and it gave me such a leg up. Now there's a lot more, it's a lot more, people are a lot more aware of it, right? And, not to toot my own horn, I like to think I have something to do with that, and just letting people know, like, hey, it's this whole process out there, that most investors are not aware of. And so once you really start to dig into zoning, and I'm a big strategy guy. Like, I like strategies, and I think it's one of the best strategies, especially when you marry the buy right strategy with the commercial multifamily real estate. It's absolutely phenomenal, right? Like those returns that I got off those kinds of deals are really, it's hard to recreate that doing any other strategy.
Awesome. I love that. And with that, before we continue on, because we are really knee deep in the conversation and we're going to continue to keep it going, where can folks find you at on social media?
Yeah, so on Facebook, it's Dan the Real Estate Man. And if they want to follow Bragg, they can just type in Bragg, which is BRAG on Facebook. You can sign up there. On Instagram, it's Dan the Real Estate Man 1. So I lost the password to Dan the Real Estate Man. And on Instagram, it's Bragg Investors, and they can follow us there for all the updates with Bragg and all the events that we have going on there.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. And ladies and gentlemen, I will make sure the links are in the comments below in the description. You mentioned, a few great returns that you had on the deals that you've done, and even especially with the 44 unit deal. Is there any deals, most recent or even in the past that, you can elaborate further on as one of those success stories?
Sure. So this was 6-unit building that I own. A couple of things kind of lined up right here, that made this probably one of the highest returns that I've made in the shortest period of time. It was a 6-unit building, one of your sort of corner properties that you might see. And so when I bought the property, it actually wasn't 6 units. So let me back up. When I purchased the property, there was 4 apartments and 1 retail space on the first floor, just like a whole kind of empty space in the back. I was purchasing it from an investor that was just in over his head. He had to get out of the deal. Looked at it, he was probably 80% done, all the apartments, but he was just having issues with the contractor. The contractor was kind of running out of money, and his loan was actually past due. So I looked at the deal, and interestingly enough, first he tried to play hardball. First I had a wholesaler talking to him. The wholesaler didn't really understand commercial real estate or how to really research, but once he just put me in contact with the seller, and I still paid the wholesaler. I was like, let me talk to him. Research is your friend, right? You can research. Okay, let me see how long they've owned this property. Let me see when that loan was taken out. Okay, this has been beyond a year. I know that loan is already due, and they're charging extension fees. And on top of that, you're having contractor problems, right? And on top of that, you're low on capital, right? It's not a whole bunch of you can't, it's not as much wiggle room as you want us to believe, right?
Exactly.
And so once you get this information, right? I'm not trying to cheat the guy, but also I the price.
Want the fair deal.
Yeah, and the price needs to make sense. So ultimately, Ended up getting this property for $160,000. And, you know, looked at the zoning, of the property, and by right, it could have 6 units in that building. And it currently had 5. So what I did was finish up the 4 that he was doing, which was like 80% done. So there it wasn't much. He did a lot of the hard work there. Some things we had to tweak. He did most of the hard work there. And in the back of the property, so there was a retail space up front that just kind of walked back into almost like no man's land. It's just an open space. So we closed off that retail space and we built a 2-bedroom apartment in that space that was in back of the retail space. So that project took us about 9 months or so.
Okay.
We got the property, we got it rented out, and it reappraised at $680,000. At which time, and it cost me about $160,000.
I was hoping you'd reiterate the starting price again, so folks in here, because I'm like, wait, what? Hold
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I paid 160 and the rehab was about 160. So I was into it for like 320. And then so then I took out 75% of that 680, which I think at the time was I don't do the math, it's like 5 something. So my cash out on that was like 200 and something thousand dollars on the cash, and it's still in it cash flow. So what people need to understand is that refi, that is a non-taxable event, right? Because that's debt, it's not profit, it's cash, right? But it's debt, you know. So you know, that was a tremendous deal, and that deal came from just understanding zoning. Quickly, a land deal that I did, I bought land from a church. I think I paid $140,000 for the land. I got the land approved for 44 units. That cost about $200,000 roughly.
Wow.
And then I sold that. As a shovel-ready project, just mean I gave you the plans and the permit. I sold that for $575,000. So that's no construction, no anything, just understanding of zoning. Yeah, it's just understanding of zoning and kind of overseeing architects, which does take work, you know, but not like a lot of work. Like they send you the information, you kind of look over it, back. And that was $200,000. We're a little bit less, obviously, because you gotta pay the commissions and so forth. But still, it's not bad for not physically having to do any work. So that's just the power of zoning and really understanding zone.
Wow, thank you so much for the insight as well as the story. I want to, if we can, hop in our DeLoreans. For those that know, it is a Back to the Future reference. Hopefully, I'm not that old yet, but anyway, if we can hop into the future, Dan. It's 2024 now. You know, the year 2029, 2034. How are you seeing like the multifamily market, and especially as it deals with multifamily conversions?
Well, I mean, I have no idea what 2029 is going to hold, but I will say that, I mean, right now we're obviously we're in a different market, right? And so a lot of the commercial multifamily properties, they're going through, you know, a little bit of resetting of values because the rates are really affecting the values. I think there's going to be some opportunities there. Real estate, as your audience should know, and if they don't, I'll tell them, it's a long term investment, right? And so we're not just worried about this year, we're worried about, okay, what's the opportunity over the long term when we owning this asset? Does it still make sense? Excuse me. And there's different factors that will impact. The interest rates will. We have higher insurance rates, at least in Philadelphia, think that might be a nationwide thing. That's going to impact valuations. Taxes are going to, which is going up, is going to impact. And so, number one, you need to get knowledgeable. You need to understand if you're interested in getting into commercial multifamily, you should really understand how it operates, right? So one of the things that I did prior to investing is I just educated myself, right, through different courses, classes, events, and books, and all sorts of things, right? Because you always want to be in front of where you ultimately want to land. You don't want to be figuring it out necessarily as you're doing it. You at least want to have an idea, right? There's always things you're going to have to figure out, but you want to at least have high level idea of how the process works.
Awesome. No, that's incredible. And you mentioned about courses. Any book recommendations, especially for a newbie investor and or possibly somebody who maybe has a small portfolio of 8 units that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, so actually, I think the books that investors need to read are not necessarily books on real estate. I think the biggest thing that's going to hold investors back, especially if you're not coming from a wealthy family, is mindset. Your mindset is going to hold you back much further than anything else. So some of the books that have helped me in like that regard is Rich Dad Poor Dad. I know a lot of people bring that up, but it was an eye-opening book. Just challenges the way that you were talking about money. There is another book that I love. It's called Think and Grow Rich: A Black Choice. So it's the classic book, but it has a twist on it by Dennis Kimbrough. Again, this is mindset, right? Because until you work on that mindset, there's only so far that you can possibly go. You cannot possibly outpace how you think. And so one of the things that I learned during this process is I had to get rid of a lot of the ways that I understand things that I was taught about money. I had to unlearn them and then take on new information. Because just a lot of I mean, we are the sum, generally, most of us, of the people that we spend the most time around. And if your parents taught you about money and it was based in either fear or lack, or they just didn't have the information, right? That's most of us. Doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Most people's parents it just was not that financially savvy. And so they teach you a lot of things that what I say helps you exist but not thrive. So it helps keep you from being poor, but it will never help you prosper. Right? Those are two different things. One of them is like you'll never have lack, but you probably won't have access either. And so once you have access, then you can do more, you can be more, you can experience more, you can give more. And so, but that takes really understanding of how money works, learn how money works. It's amazing to me how people live in this country and in this economy and have no clue how it works. Zero. And so they're constantly at the whims of the economy because they have no clue how it actually operates.
Yeah, and even more so, just going off of that fear, there's, so many things that we do see in the news when, they're expressing, oh, interest rates are going high again, or, the real estate market isn't as strong as it used to, or office space, is becoming, worse and worse over time because people are either switching to remote or hybrid. With that being said, though, and we talk about mindset being that important concept, and I can't hone on it enough that it is essential for those listening. With you, Dan, can you give some insight as far as, when somebody's facing those obstacles and hurdles and excuses where they're like, well, I just don't have time, I'm focusing on my family, I'm focusing on school, I'm trying to get through this job, I need to work double overtime in order to make ends meet. What can you speak to that as far as, being able to change that mindset or there are obstacles or hurdles in life, how can they overcome that?
Yeah, that's we could probably spend hours on that. But I'm going to give you a couple of different ways. Number
Yeah.
one is that you first need to understand that, ultimately it is on you. Like nobody's going to do it for you. The other thing is that there is no perfect timing, that goes to a couple of things that you just said. I have at this point in my life spoken in front of thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, one-on-one thousands of people easily. And I can say this without any hesitation. Everyone who has ever said the statement, as soon as fill in the blank, has never done it. As soon as my kids graduate, as soon as, I get this promotion, as soon as, whatever that as soon as is, they will never do it. Because what that does is you're telling yourself that there's going to be this comfortable point in which things are going to be, all these events are going to happen that's going to make it, not so difficult for you to do things. And it's just, that does not exist. You have to do it. You have to do it afraid. You have to do it when you're uncertain. You have to do it when you're, when you're unsure. Like the idea of you're going to wait to this perfectly curated moment is such a fallacy. But that's our mind seeking comfort. It's going to want to seek comfort. That's what it does. But the only way we grow in any real way, whether it is intellectually or financially or physically, is through struggle. So like when you go to the gym, you're pushing weights, that's struggle. When you're reading a book, excuse me, and you're trying to understand these new concepts, that's your brain struggling to take in new information. That's how it grows. The idea that you're going to be in this comfortable state and grow is ridiculous. It will never happen. You will be right there. And that's where you see most people. They're just afraid, and I get it. And that's why I say, even before you read books on strategy and all that, read books on mindset. So learn to understand yourself, what your strengths are, and what your weaknesses are. Learn to identify habits that are not helping you, people around you that are bringing you down. There's a whole bunch of things, right? There are people like, I advise people all the time, you need to network. You go out and be, wow, I'm an introvert and nobody cares. No, who cares? Like, go out there anyway. I'm not saying that you're going to talk to as many people as the person who is a natural extrovert, but you at least start building that brave muscle. And I forget the person who says this, and it'll come to me a little bit later maybe, but it's the fact is that you don't get less afraid is that you become more brave, and you become more brave by putting yourself out there, by putting yourself in scary situations, right? I'm not saying dangerous, but scary, right? If you're afraid to go out and network, be honest with yourself. Stop leaning on the excuse that you're an introvert. It's not, so what? Go out there anyway. Talk to one person. Make that your goal. I'm going to talk to one person. Then the next time you go out there, talk to two people, or maybe one and a half, or whatever the case is, right? But at some point, you're going to become much more brave, and you won't even think about it. And I'll just say this. I'll say this last thing on that. I knew for a while, or I knew that I had this information that I needed to share with people, but I was so afraid to public speak for a couple of reasons. I had a bad stutter, like as a kid. That kind of stick with me. We all kind of have these things, and I was very I was very what's the word? I was very self like I was very aware of that, and I just kind of
Self-conscious.
Self-conscious. There you go. I was very self-conscious of it. And then I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm gonna just and I remember this clearly because it had this hold over me. This fear had this hold over me where I wouldn't do it. People would ask me to speak. Nah, I'm okay. And I said, you know what? I don't care who asked me to speak. The next thing somebody asked me to speak at, I'm doing it no matter what. And so sure enough, the next thing came up, and I did it and I was terrified. I mean, it's hard to even get across to you or the people watching is how afraid I was. You know, terribly afraid. And now you ask me to speak in front of a group I wouldn't even think about. Sure, but now you want me to go out right like I, right at this moment. I'm the same. The only way I got there was I put myself out there multiple times. Right. If I'd have never took that first step, guess where I would be? Still petrified, still terrified. Right. So you got to go out there. You got to face those demons, man. You got to face that fear. You got to face it head on. Don't try to avoid it, looking right in the face, and just go right at it.
Awesome. I love that. And before we get out of here, I do have a couple more questions for you. But I just want to notate to folks, I hope that y'all are taking down notes. I hope that y'all listen in. And it's even not so much, as far as Dan and I pouring into you, but really just reflecting back on what you need to look upon. Dan didn't even go over any type of real estate books for you as far as getting in there. It's the mindset, and the mindset is critical, and it could be just done in the flick of a switch. So don't feel that, it might take a while for you to get there, but when you do get there, mindset wise, flick of a switch. So with that, one more time, Dan, can you give us as far as where we can find you at on social media?
Sure. On Facebook, it's Dan, the real estate man. And for Bragg, you can just type in Bragg, do like B.R.A. I don't think I said that before. You gotta put dots in there and it'll pop up. On Instagram, it's Dan, the real estate man 1. And for Bragg, it's Bragg Investors on Instagram. And I'm walking through projects. I'm showing people what I'm doing. Some of it is about mindset because I'm just a firm believer in mindset. A lot of people think, their problems are the cause of somebody else, and most of it is what's going on here. And until you can address those issues squarely, you're going to constantly be tortured because you're going to feel like all the answers are outside of you, rather than taking care of the things that you can do for yourself, rather than waiting for some outside influences to come fix all your problems.
Thank you, man. Thank you for that. My last question before I let you go and get out of here. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think I did see on one of the posts about affiliate marketing that Bragg does. Is that something that you can speak on further, or if there's a point of contact within Bragg somebody can get in touch with?
Sure. So what I will do is I'll send you the link. So again, man, Bragg is just a great community. One of the biggest things that when I envisioned Bragg was for it to have like a family feel. And like to that point, so we do what we call the Bragg family reunion. Is out in the park. People bring their families. This year is going to be, I think it's August 31st. It's, if you're new to real estate, or even if you're seasoned, you need that community. You need people to bounce ideas off of. If you don't have that, I definitely recommend that you look into Bragg. And if you know somebody in Bragg, ask them, right? I think that's the best way. Don't just take my word for it. Ask Bragg members, what do you guys think about Bragg? But yeah, what I'll do is I will share the Bragg the Bragg affiliate link with you. And then also, if folks are interested in learning more about multifamily conversions, I have a course where I teach A to Z, every step of the multifamily conversion process, how to identify properties that will work, how to analyze them, how to fund them, how to rehab those deals, how to work with contractors, and then the refinance process. I poured my whole brain into this. So If you think that your guests might be interested in that course, I'll share that link also.
Absolutely. Definitely look out for the links in the description, ladies and gentlemen. Dan, I can't thank you enough. The gems that you dropped, the insight that you dropped, your success stories, and even teaching us all and reminding those as well as far as vision and mindset. So thank you again for being part of the growing. I believe this is going to be episode 246. So definitely come a long way. So I really, really appreciate you being here, man.
But thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the RNG Radio Show. Be sure to like and subscribe for more episodes and future content. If you'd like to learn more, visit us at danielumstead.com. Stay blessed, my fellow millionaires.